Cool. Old beers. Old beers.
Yeah! Welcome back to Calling All Beings, baby, on a Wednesday night. I'm your host, DJ, along with this incredible group of co-hosts that I am blessed to be accompanied by: the co-creator, executive producer, co-conspirator, technical. He's basically got all the damn titles. Money Nathan, what's up, brother?
Man, happy Wednesday, right? It is like the coldest May Wednesday of my life out there. I don't know what's going on where you are, but here it's crazy windy and cold, and I don't like it. But I like being here where it's warm by the fire. Looking forward to the fireside chat tonight.
Nathan's going to light the fire here in a little bit. Our guest is going to see that. But before we do that, let's say hello to the lovely, the centering cam of this podcast. She is a professional in mental health. She is the host of Deb's Day in a Dojo. She is an OG of CAB. Put your hands together for Deb's, a study of UAPs. What's up, homegirl?
Hi, I'm just happy to be with such positive people here today. Yay!
Can I get an amen? You know what, man?
Amen.
Whenever we get together, it only happens once a week, once every 10 days, and it's a beautiful thing. But now, Nathan.
Yes, sir.
You know, we love to go outside the bubble. We're doing like Logan's Run. You know, they were in that bubble, and then all of a sudden he and that young lady, Jessica, they escaped to the outside. You know, and saw what the world looked like. That's what we're reaching outside the UFO bubble tonight.
Love that.
All right. Our guest is the host of a totally dope podcast because she's a totally dope person. And once I heard that podcast, I just wanted to have this individual on. Her podcast is called Meredith for Real. So wipe the Cheeto dust off your fingers. Get that orange off there and put those hands together for the part-time model, the full-time curiositer, Miss Meredith Hackworth Edwards!
Thank you.
Can I get an amen from somebody?
Wow.
Amen.
Man, for Meredith.
I'm going to make all of that my alarm in the morning.
Oh, it'll get you up. I've been doing it for 2 years. It's amazing.
Excellent.
There is no copyright on that. Meredith, man, before we even say anything, it's an honor to have you on. You have like a pretty big deal podcast. I heard you talk UFOs. I don't even know whose show it was on. I don't know if it was on your show. And I was like, man, why don't we bring someone out from outside this crazy community, this UFO community, this bubble, and bring them on and see what they think. And since you're curious, man, this was a perfect fit. So thank you so much. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, and I'm outside the community, but I'm like on the fence, kind of looking over. I've been interested. Yeah, that's the fence right there with your hands. It's like puppy paws, but different. Yeah, so it's an honor. I've been interested in UFOs since I was little. It was like Betty and Barney Hill for some reason, which is really odd because I was like 7 in an all-white town of 4,000 people, and yet somehow with no internet, like 1980 something, I'm interested in a biracial couple who was abducted by aliens. And yeah, I think I even like wrote a report on it later in life, but that's how it started. So I'm not interested. So, but I'm just not, there's such a wide cast of characters in ufology that I do find it hard to keep up. So I would consider myself for that reason an outsider.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle, and they're making a documentary out of that entire Betty and Barney Hill story. In fact, the Obamas are behind the production effort of that.
Really?
Ooh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's all
juicy.
kinds of awesome.
Yeah, right.
And before I even get into my ridiculous, let me turn you over to the capable hands of my co-conspirator in welcoming, fun, entertaining, and interesting talk about the phenomenon. Money Nathan.
Thanks, DJ. So Meredith, great to have you with us. I've been able to kind of watch some of your shows and really enjoyed your content. I mean, your range is incredible. So I don't know how you do it, but it's really impressive. All the different topics that you cover, and you put your guests at ease. Your conversational style, your question style is really incredible. And I wanted to ask you, as someone who doesn't seem to be afraid to have kind of weird conversations with people, talking about strange things or things that make people uncomfortable, what has that taught you about the human condition when you can get into that stuff with somebody?
Yeah, it's really taught me that if you have the right questions, you can unlock a lot of interesting stuff. I call it the treasure of humanity. It's really in the nuance, because what we see, what's obvious, and what I call the algorithm, which is just, we know what the internet algorithm is, of course, but I think in our human nature, we have our own, self-imposed algorithm of habits that we do, rituals, and just being attracted to the people who are similar to us, whether that's in belief or their, physical characteristics are similar. Finding the nuance in between all of that obvious stuff is like really what makes humanity interesting. And I've noticed over the years that people just seem to be losing their ability to engage with curiosity or to lead with curiosity. Instead, they tend to lead with canceling. And so the purpose of my show is to just show the reward that's waiting for you when you decide to lead with curiosity instead. And sometimes it leads you to weird places, but it's never boring.
No, I love that. And what's it like for you, like at family Thanksgiving? Because we've all got that family member that you don't really want to have a conversation with, but you
Yeah.
get into it with them and you just kind of go through the motions. But I feel like you go beyond that. You probably get into it with them at a deeper level, where I imagine some magic happens there. What's that like for you?
Oh, my dad, he likes to mention people, and he's like, have you interviewed them? You've interviewed them, haven't you? Which is so sweet. I'm like, no, dad, not yet. He's like, okay, we'll be watching something that haunted Saginaw series. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
did you interview that guy? No, dad, not yet. Thank you.
Pass the
Get him on the
gravy,
show.
please.
Yeah, right. Pass the gravy. And then my uncle's wife, my Aunt Stacy, she's also an appreciator of meaningful conversation. So at our Thanksgiving gathering this past Thanksgiving, I think in the first 2 hours we covered death. We talked about death rituals and what we wanted to do when we died. We talked about Roe versus Wade. We got in it. I made a list. I think I even made a social media post about it, because it was like, this
Wow.
is what I like,
So let me ask one more question, then I'll pass it off to Deb. So that energizes you, which is interesting, because I understand you're an introvert. My wife's an introvert. So in those situations when there's lots of people around and you're having lots of conversation, that can be kind of draining for some people. But it sounds like that's really, obviously, and you're into this subject matter, kind of curious, talking to lots of different people. That seems to give you life. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Introversion is interesting because people always think it's a synonym for being awkward. And so when you tell people, oh, I'm an introvert, and they go, no, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm like, sit down.
I didn't say that.
That's not what I'm
You're
saying.
like, I have pity on you.
Yeah, right. I pity the fool. No, it's way more about the quality of interactions, and usually those one-on-one conversations, if they're meaningful, are really nice. Even if you disagree, if the conversation has that very lovely foundation of curiosity and respect, you can have a conversation with anybody. The problem is a lot of people don't practice that. And so when they do, and we have these really amazing conversations, I just find it super life-giving.
Love that. Deb.
Just with
sorry,
those,
DJ.
before I give it to Deb, just with those opening remarks, I feel like, would you like to be the host of Cab? That's so amazing.
What's
Fantastic
interesting is a lot of so my podcast category is social science, right? Which is kind of like a cousin to society and culture. And when I look at in the Apple Podcast categories for shows in that category, it is like 70% UFO paranormal stuff.
Wow.
So
That's huge.
I think we're cousins and we just don't know it. So I think a lot of my audience, even though I've only done like 8 episodes that might fall into that category out of 185 or whatever, but I think my audience is interested in stuff like this, as am I.
Nice.
Awesome. We're on the right track. Deb, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so first of all, believe it or not, I am also an introvert. So I can feel that. Like I'm also like there are too many people. I just need one person in front of me and I'll be
Yeah.
good. So I was gonna say that since you are curious and it seems like you're covering a lot of topics, what do you feel most intrigued by? That's what I would like to know. What really is something you just can't get let go of and want to know everything about?
Okay, you guys are gonna. This is kind of. It's weird. Obviously, that's not surprising. I guess.
Bring
Okay,
it on.
there's this
Other than
one,
my hairstylist, we know
that's
that
right.
aside.
Other than that, there's this one subject and this one guest that I want for this one subject, and I cannot let it go. Normally, I'm like, I'll try like maybe 4 times, and then if you don't reply to any of my requests, like I move on with my life because I don't want stalking, cease and desist letters. But I want to do an episode about fecal matter transplant, FMT. And I want to do it
Goodness.
with this one doctor in the Northeast because it's like called the Biome Center, I think. And the doctor's name is escaping me right now. But I have he followed me on Twitter. Like he only follows like a few people and he followed me back and I'm thinking, oh, sweet, this will be easy. So I sent him a DM, nothing. And he is the best presenter of the information. And I love guests who have actionable resources for my listeners, right? So I don't necessarily just want a researcher of FMT. I want the CEO of the donation center for FMT.
Incredible. I mean, I hope you
Dr.
get to the
Duty.
bottom of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I knew I should have brought up my Farrago where I could have that drum thing. That was awesome. Dr. Duty, if you need help, I certainly will gang up and say, look, you need to interview with Meredith Edwards. Come on. Don't be
That would be
foolish.
incredible. I've heard amazing things about that. Just entire biome transformations from people who've had that procedure.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I should maybe my hair would grow back.
You never know.
Everything. I asked people who are in touch with the phenomenon, is there anything? But thus far, I've been striking out. Meredith, if you would, since our audience isn't familiar with you, could you talk a little bit about how you've come to this place that you're in as a interviewer and curiositor, part-time model, mom, all this kind of stuff?
Well, I'm not a mom, except for of plants.
Okay.
And I do have over 100 plants. So
Wow.
yes. So that's definitely a thing. So I, when I'm not podcasting, I'm definitely buying plants I don't need.
I love it.
Yeah. But I've had many jobs. I was the kid that was, you asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there was 7 answers. And I never grew out of that. And that turns out to mean you should be an actor, as it were. And so because that's the only other people that I've met that are still like that, they don't outgrow it. But I was a sign language interpreter and I was an admin assistant and a Mary Kay sales director, and that was the longest thing I've done. It was about 17 years, and it was through those sales interactions. They're not what you think of when you think of sales. It's very much a high level interpersonal communication when you're at a director level. Usually there's some goobers, but usually it's high level. And I found that as I felt that season coming to an end, I started to listen to podcasts and I loved to interview podcasts. And I was like, wait a minute, this is very similar to what I do in my sales position when I go into a woman's house and talk with her at her kitchen table about her skin and her eye makeup and stuff. And because really, when you think about it, it's anthropology. And I love anthropology. I love oh, wow, I can tell by your kitchen that X, Y, and Z is important to you. Tell me about that. And it just was so cool to me. It was the most energizing part of really that position. And so After I had that thought, about a week later, my husband came home and said, "Hey, you'd be a good podcaster." And I was like, "Ooh, that's very random and weird." And then about a week after that, Pensacola, Florida, where we live, had a free lunch and learn called Principles of Podcasting. And I was like, all right, I got it. I guess I'm going to that. And so I went, I found people who did tech, and I started the show. And then that, turned into this show, which the purpose has always been to inspire curiosity. The subject matter has evolved over time. And currently it's kind of split into two. Half of the episodes are with people who are a paradox. They shouldn't exist, and yet they do, like the atheist doctor who studied near-death experiences for 50 years, Dr. Bruce Grayson.
Wow.
I highly recommend his book, by the way. It was amazing. And then the other half are questions that people think in private but don't ever say out loud. That kind of goes along with the introvert thing. So things that are like taboo because of like cultural hypnosis, or just because they're taboo, like, why do we in America practice secular circumcision when the rest of the secular world doesn't? So stuff that like nobody really talks about, but we do.
Well,
You boldly go, and I like that.
Yeah. And then that has also turned into me being a podcaster for hire. So that's how I make money podcasting. So larger companies who want to add podcasting to their brand will hire me to produce and sometimes host their show. So I'm the host and producer of Escambia County Public Schools podcast called Voices United in Education. Yeah. So
Amazing.
thanks.
Man, I do a podcast from my high school back in New York, and I don't make a dime, but it is extremely rewarding to bring the stories of my hometown to others in my hometown, and just talk about the way we sort of like that area that we were brought up in. So that just kind of like this, it's just so fulfilling to do this. But it is great that people have decided that they want to hire you to represent them. That's like totally awesome. Money Nathan.
Yeah. So welcome to a UFO podcast. I don't know if this is the first UFO podcast that you've been on, maybe.
Yeah.
So welcome. We're honored to have you with us. And of course, we talk about a lot of things here, a lot of strange things. And I'd like to know from someone that is sort of on the outside, like you said, sitting at the fence, looking in, what's an area of the UFO world that you want to know more about, or maybe you just don't understand, that you want to kind of kick off for us?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, I have to say that your show is really good, because I have listened to a lot of UFO shows in researching for the other few guests that I've had on my show that are related subject matter wise, and they're all this is by far the toppest. I'm making up a word. That's how good it is. The
Like
toppest,
Curiositor.
mostest. Yeah, like Curiositor. It's made up. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's really, really good. I
Thank you so
think,
much.
yeah. I think what I am having a mental conundrum
Mhm.
about right now is the intersection of ufology and religion.
Mm.
And yeah, and here's why. Because I'm reading Chris Bledsoe's book,
Mhm.
God, UFO God.
UFO God. Yep.
UFO of God.
Yeah, of God. Which grammatically I don't understand that, but
Nobody does.
the book is really good. It's a very good read, and it's just insane, like his story. And like I can track with UFO stuff, but then for example, when he talks about like, and it's an angel, but it's like a UFO, and then there's shadow people, and then they're like, I have a hard time tracking with all of that. And I understand that there are people who feel like somehow all of these things are connected. But that is like the area of all of this that I am the most on the outside of.
Love it.
You're in luck, because we just so happen to have someone who's really who's done some significantly deep academic dives. Actually, both, because Deb's a researcher who is a counselor. Nathan has done his own research, and he also has a master's in religion. So take it away, Money Nathan.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, all right. So I went to seminary, and got a seminary degree, and was a Christian minister for a very brief period of time in my life, while I was in seminary. I grew up as a pastor's kid. So, I mean, I was born into it.
What?
It's
PK in
my
the
blood.
house.
PK in the house. Watch out.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was kind of my world, going up into early adulthood. And the seminary experience for me just totally jaded me to religion. Like just, and it wasn't that I was like, I had some peers that went into that experience who were conservative, and it was a liberal school, and they were completely shattered and came out just, all turned around and whatnot. I came into it being a liberal Christian and came out of it in a similar position, just not really feeling that it meant anything to me anymore. So I kind of gave all that up for a pretty long time, became agnostic, atheist for, I don't know, almost 2 decades. So the UFO topic, interestingly enough, has like re-spiritualized the world for me, because there is this aspect to the UFO experience that you can map onto religious experience. It is, people who have experience, Chris Bledsoe's a great example. This sort of occurs to them out of nowhere. They're not somebody that you would expect an experience to happen to. It's indescribable. The best they can do is sort of try to contextualize it with something that they know. And for Chris Bledsoe, who's very religious, like the context of what he knows is the Bible and angels and God and these supernatural powers and all these kinds of things. So it makes sense that he would take that context and map it onto his UFO experience. But it goes further than that, right? So it's not just, okay, well, they're not really angels, but he thinks that they're angels. If we then relook at the Bible or look at other religious texts, and you kind of read that with fresh eyes, and to be frank with you, like it took me a long time being out of the church to start seeing the church as like an alien place, and think about what is said at church in the same way that someone might think about when they hear people talk about UFOs. Like, I think if you grow up in the South or you grow up in the religious United States, religious parts of the United States, like Christianity is just a part of our cultural fabric. And so we've normalized it in a way that we just don't pay attention to it quite as much as we might pay attention to, I don't know, a cult type of belief or something. But when you have distance from it, it stands out like a sore thumb. So looking at this old stuff, with this fresh perspective, what's happening here in the Bible? What's happening here in the Quran? What's happening here in the Vedic texts? Where we're talking about experiences that are transformative and almost, out of body, etc. Then you realize, well, wait a minute, maybe this phenomena, whatever it is, has been a part of the human story from day one, and it's influencing us in ways that we are only now kind of starting to grapple with in a serious way. Sorry, long answer.
No, that's fantastic. I'm really interested in this stuff because it just seems like something that I'd always thought as two separate things. And then now myself not being in the church, but still having a belief in spirit, like in not just like the great spirit in the sky, but like humans, we are spirits,
Mm-hmm.
and really like I believe in like evil spirit, like don't fuck with spirits, like, and
Yeah.
so like to read Chris's book and to see his accounts of especially like shadow people, to me, like shadow people, okay, that's definitely a bad deal, don't touch the shadow people. But because he has all these really beautiful experiences, how like the alien beings cured his Crohn's disease and all of stuff, and then he's got really scary things that happen to him too. So I'm curious what y'all's take is on the that part of it. Like maybe it's outside or maybe it's adjacent to religion, but the part of basically ghosts and spirits, hauntings and that sort of thing, poltergeists and UFO stuff?
Yeah, great question. We can go a lot of different directions with that. I want to make sure Deb gets a chance to answer first.
I,
Go ahead.
I wrote down like 15 things about this.
I know you were chomping at the bit, Deb, so go for it.
Okay, so the first thing to be aware of is that you're not the only one who's trying to figure out the intersection. NASA spent like $1 million getting a whole bunch of religious
Yes.
figures together to talk about this, which is really interesting. There's also supposedly this like group of people who are very religious and are concerned that demons are involved, supposedly, and like trying to stop the narrative. So that's just like one of the things, like the mythos of the UAP, right? The transformation issue is really big, that becomes a big part of this. But I wanted to kind of jump to the thing you just said and address that, because we've had a lot of researchers who spent a lot of time on this come out saying all of this is connected. And they feel like once you go down the path far enough, you start to see some parallels. The like orbs, for instance, that are a common UAP are seen by people who study spirits. There's also, like I watched Fatima the other day, one of the more recent movies about Fatima. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. It happened in Portugal. Some children encountered a lady dressed in white. They had the impression that she was the Virgin Mary. She was giving them messages. And then there was a massive miracle seen by everyone who came to the site. And it was the sun spiraling. And yeah, apparently it's been filmed, but I'm having a hard time like finding the film. There's some pictures available online of the incident, though. So that's very similar to like the UAP phenomenon. There's a lot of parallels. And if you, like I said, you go down the rabbit hole long enough, you find out that they're pretty much the same. I would recommend, I think it's is it Trojan Horse, Project Trojan Horse? Can you remind me, Nathan? You read this book.
Yes. Yeah. I think it is Project Trojan Horse. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Project Trojan Horse, and also Diana Pasulka, who really addresses like the Vatican and like the fact that the Catholics are probably the most supernatural
really
group
are.
of people. Like not only with like having the massive trove of documents about all the supernatural, but just like the exorcisms and so on.
Mhm.
So
Operation Trojan Horse. Sorry.
yes, thank you. I was like, why am I not thinking of it today? Thank you. Yes, Operation Trojan Horse. That was one of the researchers that ended up on this path, and a lot of them get there. Valet is another.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jacques Vallée.
Mhm.
Jacques Vallée.
Yeah, I read American Cosmic, and I
Nice.
interviewed Dr. Pasulka on my show, and that was kind
Dude.
of the first introduction into the intersection. I mean, she not only does the intersection of religion and UFOs, but also of technology. And so, like, I just want to be her best friend.
Dude,
She's so cool.
She is yeah, I was gonna say she's coming on June 11th, and I was gonna say if you hadn't had her on, because now I'm gonna go back and find that episode and listen to it.
Yeah,
we
episode
would-
148.
Nice.
Okay, thank you, because let me write that down, because we would have helped you to get her when she comes
Oh,
back
thank
June
you.
11th. But she's very sure that this is affirmational to people of religion. And that's what's interesting,
yeah.
whereas it's made other people maybe diverge, or, but she believes, no, this will strengthen people's faith. Because, a lot of people believe that they're all connected. And actually, you were about to make a point, so I don't want to cut you off because I can come back in. Did you have something, Meredith? No?
I think I was just excited about Dr. Pasulka. Like,
Oh,
It's natural.
she's
I
gangster,
get it.
man.
yeah. I'm so glad that, and she introduced me to Jose Herrera,
Mhm.
who was a Marine trained in like psychic
Remote
abilities.
viewing and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And because she, like, one page of her book says, my former student Jose was trained in his squadron leadership, blah, 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 for, psychic abilities. I was like, dear Diana, I need to meet Jose. And he has a podcast, and he would probably be a great fit for the show. If you're interested, I'd be happy to make an intro. He
I am.
is like deep dive dude. Like if I was going to give him a nickname, that would be it.
Nice.
Because,
Deep-
yeah.
Let me just ask you real quick: is he an Intel guy by
Is
trade?
he an Intel guy? I don't know. He
Because-
is no longer active duty.
Because if the squadron wanted him to remote view, which is what it sounds like you were saying, we all we have a Deb. Do you we suspect possibly maybe that that Lou and we I don't know, should I say it?
It's in a book. It's
Yeah,
in a
and
book.
and just to clarify too, I think, and maybe you were saying this, Meredith, but Jose's squadron was trained in these techniques to kind of trust their inner sight or intuition. So he's there's one episode I saw him speak where he goes through the process, and basically he would say they look at a map of the territory where they were going to go out on patrol or something, and then he would say, well, there's somebody over here, there's something I'm picking up over here that we have to pay attention to, and lo and behold, there in fact was something there. And of course, out in combat, they're trained to lean into that skill as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we talked on the show, he talked about how he believes everyone can really harness this ability, and that some of it is, I always mess up this word, cyclical, but that sounds like cycle. It's like psychic. What's the word that I'm looking for?
Cyclical
operates in cycles.
Cyclical? Yeah, psychic. Woo woo. You know what I'm saying?
Cyclical.
Okay.
Yeah, cyclical. That he says some of it is cyclical, but a lot of it is just tapping into the part of us that's sleepy because our noses are in our phones.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense, but people suspect this has never been officially said that I know. Deb said it might have been a book, but that people believe that Lou Elizondo might have been a remote viewer when he was sitting like J2.
Oh, because he was in the ghost.
It was in a book.
Skinwalker to the Pentagon, I think, is where it.
Yes.
Oh, Skinwalker. Okay. I don't know that it's true. I mean, we know Lou, but we've never. He's not wanted to speak about that. So we wouldn't. We'd kind of make it a point if somebody's like doesn't want to talk about it, or they've been asked it and they're not open to discussing it. Then we don't ask them on here.
Yeah.
But that's why I asked if he was intel, and yes, I mean clearly he's giving them intelligence about there's an IED here, or there may be some sort of an Al Qaeda encampment right there. You wouldn't want to go that direction. You'd want to go out to the east and then north, that kind of stuff. So that is really interesting. We would love to talk to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the community seems to be having a lot of difficulty in marrying things together. So now we're part of the Bigfoot community, which heretofore we were not as of 6 months ago. We just kind of got into this, and fortunately we met Matt and we added him to our cast, but he has his own show, Bigfoot Crossroads.
Oh, I think I've listened to that show.
He's great, man, right?
Yeah, because here in the American South we have interesting things around Bigfoot, and and I find cryptids just, as we said before we started recording, I find it very interesting. So that's interesting.
And so because that we know a lot of people that have had a flesh and blood encounter. I saw it cross the road. I saw it on night vision. I saw its eyes. It came around my campsite. You've heard it all by now. I can tell that you know what some of these encounters have been. And some of them are not open, that there may be a paranormal aspect to the creature that is heretofore unproven, but may still be a thing. So I try to just keep my aperture open. I didn't think, when we first started the show, I didn't think ghosts had anything to do with the phenomenon, the UFOs. But you hang around Nathan and Deb and a lot of our other friends long enough, and it opens your mind that, wait a minute, maybe I just wasn't open to this. And there may be a portal aspect that Bigfoots have come in, and maybe people say, no, it's impossible. Really? Is it?
I mean, Yeah, I think I love digging into native cultures and their take on this stuff because I feel like there's some real wisdom there that gets lost because in our, Western tradition, we don't value non-written history. But I talked with his name's Lopaka Kapanui. He's an actor and he's all these things. He's a storyteller. He's amazing. And he runs this Hawaiian tour group in Honolulu. And in the Hawaiian tradition, there's no word for supernatural. It's all natural. And that seems to be making sense when we talk about all these different categories of phenomenon, which, by the way, today's National Paranormal Day. So
Yeah.
happy us, right?
We planned it like this.
Yeah, it was all part of the plan. And so I kind of wonder if if you were to take all of that as like one giant ball, it would apply towards like the quantum theories and stuff. Like, I like Einstein's theory about energy, that just like, other energies, our spirit, when we pass away, it doesn't go away, doesn't like disappear. It just transfers form, kind of like water vapor. And I kind of wonder if, we're talking about Bigfoot, when we're talking about ghosts, we're talking about UFOs, if it's just simply that these things are supernatural to us and not natural because of our limited perspective on our own universe and our place in the universe and our overly self-important status in the universe.
Absolutely.
Nathan, are we too caught up in the label?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, our language defines our possibilities. And one thing I bet Meredith would agree on is that by having conversations that are strange and different and about topics that people don't want to talk about, it expands your way of thinking about not only yourself, but the world. And in the West, we've gotten really good at kind of categorizing things and boxing them and making them really tiny and hyper specialized, and as if that's a way for us to master nature. And we confuse our ability to categorize with our ability to understand, right? We kind of think that just because we've labeled it, we actually understand what's going on. Just because we have a map of how to get from here to Pensacola or whatever means like you've taken the journey. It's not the same, right? So I think part of the phenomena is showing us and kind of reminding us that there's more to the lived experience than our ability to try to frame it in a way that makes sense to us. There are things outside of our, of our comfort zone, of our knowledge, that are going to shake and transform us, that remind us reality is bigger, broader, wider, weirder than we can comprehend.
I actually have an example for this, and if go ahead, Meredith, I'll
I
ask you
just
to
simply
respond to that.
agreeing. I love reality is weirder. That I love that. That's so good.
I was listening to a Bigfoot show. I'm not going to say the name because the host is a friend of mine, but there's a guy out on a hunting trip out west with his father, and they go to like separate locations. There might have been like, several miles apart, and then they come back and meet up. And the hyper specificity with which he described every movement that he made, his weaponry, how he planned to employ that weapon, how many, and when he thought that he was being drawn in by the Bigfoot, which I think the way it sounded to me was he was actually stalking that sound that he heard, and he kept pursuing it and pursuing it, and when it finally said, okay, I've given enough ground, and stepped out from behind a tree, again, when he's talking about every minute detail of his he's not a military dude, not a law enforcement officer, but he was talking about how he had been to these sort of courses and the hyper specificity that when he saw this and how he egressed out of the area and why he took each step and how many rounds he thought he could get from this distance before this potential creature rushed him, which obviously it would have done that earlier if that was its intention. It shocked his world that he was in therapy, that his wife is like, I wish you would have killed it, that he was just, overcome. And he had decided that this had tried to draw him in to do something, when quite obviously, if it had wanted to do something to you, it probably would have done that. So I say all this to bolster the point that you said, is that it seems though people require a framework. It has to, whatever it is that I'm dealing with here, it has to fit in this framework. And if it does, I can deal with it. I can maybe shoot it and kill it if I have to or want to. And if it's outside of this framework and I'm scared to where I'm ready to pee on myself, which many Bigfoot experiencers have, that's problematic. So I think, Nathan, what you're saying is that when we're dealing with, whether it be Bigfoot, whether this be a poltergeist, whether this be a craft or beings, that we want it to be in a framework. And if it's not, that's an issue for many of us, not necessarily all of us.
Yeah. And if it doesn't fit too, that's what leads to what they call ontological shock. So,
Exo.
Yeah, the world as you know it doesn't exist anymore, but you're still here. So what is the world going to be in that new place you find yourself? And you're at that point charting into you're moving into uncharted territory.
Yeah, I wonder, since Deb is in mental health, like I was just learning about the psychologist who used to help people who had abduction experiences and how he passed away and all that kind of thing. And I'm just curious, like, Deb, if you've ever treated somebody who has had a paranormal experience, meaning not just UFO or abduction, but, something across the board that either brought them comfort or disturbed them that so much that they needed to talk about it.
Yeah, actually several. And I'm not someone who is listed as an experiencer supporter either, but this happens, and it probably happens to lots of other mental health professionals. So it's happened several times, and I've also had people talk to me about what they've seen with the UFO news and talk to me about that, and I have to be really neutral. But it is actually one of my interests to help people with the mental health aspect of all of this. It can be really traumatic.
UAP Med.
Yes.
Tell about
Yeah. Yes.
Deb's part of UAP Med as well, that has professionals of different.
Oh, really?
medical- Yeah.
Yes. We just had a panel on mental health this last weekend, actually. And there are
That's
people,
interesting.
yeah, there are people who are following in John Mack's footsteps, and the John
Mhm.
Mack Institute is actually up and running again, thanks to some people that Nathan knows, and things like that. It's like
Yeah.
it's amazing that he was able to do that. Harvard really pushed back on him for doing it. And I think I have to say, there's a little bit of a bias when it comes to someone who wants to support people with this, but as opposed to if they were, like, say, a Christian therapist, like, it's kind of just a strange
Yeah.
bias. I'm not sure why that is, but that exists.
So
Are they doing anything at the University of Virginia? Because I find that, man, I want to just interview every researcher there. That's where Dr. Bruce Grayson is. That's where Dr. Jim Tucker is, trying to get him on the show to talk about past life experiences in children. Have you heard anything about this sort of thing being looked at there?
I actually hear about a lot of places, including Harvard. So there's not a lot of public material, but there's been supernatural interest for years and years and years in all these different universities, including in Baltimore. So you'd be surprised. Like, I've heard speakers from the University of Baltimore. Like, they're all over the place.
I think it's Be More.
Yeah,
Yeah.
be more. Be more.
Be more.
BMO West
So-
Side, baby.
so-
Do that W.
Deb, what's your do you have a feeling, an opinion, an outlook on Chris Bledsoe? I'm looking at, if I had him on the show, like, what would that look like? Because I'm not a paranormal show, and I do try to present things that have more outward facing paradoxes. For example, well, like Dr. Bruce Grayson's a great example. So he studied near-death experiences for 50 years. So he's incredibly academic. He's up until like really pretty recently, he was an atheist, and yet he led this, against upstream journey of studying this subject matter. And so I like that those two things don't go together. Kind of like a bear is interesting, a tricycle is interesting, but a bear on a tricycle is super interesting. So is Chris Bledsoe a bear on a tricycle, or like I'm
Okay,
just
believe it or not, the fact that the government was so interested in him and got involved in his story might be the tricycle in this scenario. The fact that not only came to his house, but they displaced his kids in order to camp out at his house. So there's a lot more to his story. I don't know if it is touched on in the book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but the fact that the government found him really interesting and had experiences of their own when they were there is just another facet to his story that intrigues me.
And
Yeah, and I
so
think go ahead.
I was going to say Diana has not come public with exactly what she experienced there yet.
Diana has been there.
Yes, and I don't know if she will. I don't know
that's
what
right.
the. I don't know. We'll ask her about it when she comes back. I don't know if she's going to answer it, but I don't know if you saw our Jim Semivan episode. He said I went to his house and saw a white bull manifest in his backyard, right, from
Yeah.
them, and the white lady as well that Chris speaks about. So
Yeah.
what do you say to that when it's a retired CIA operative? Do you go, oh man, I don't believe you, dude. I mean, these are and that's we've just named two people out of many that have been there. And when all those 3-letter agencies went there, is because they found a significant amount of evidence that he could manifest something pretty much on call. And a
Yeah.
lot of people can't do that. I also wanted to mention to you, Deb alluded to and Nathan alluded to Exo Academian. This guy's name is Darren. He took over. Is it the ranking position at the John Mack
He's the communications director for the John Mack Institute.
Okay. And he's an experiencer. He has also been to Chris Bledsoe's property. He is an experiencer. He has spoken at a couple of events of friends of ours have had. And I think he would be a very interesting guest for your show, Meredith. And we wouldn't have a lot of trouble arranging that. So just let us know if you decide you want to have Darren. Because
Do you know his last name? Can you share it?
Yeah, it's
King.
Darren King.
Okay, great. I will cyberstalk engaged.
Yeah, and Nathan is
I'm
like
talking to him tomorrow, so I'll mention it to you.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
Nathan has coffee with him every week, so this is not going to be not going to
Yeah.
be like me trying to get Chris Bledsoe on here. And
I got
Right.
to meet him recently for a one-on-one talk that I thought was going to be 15 minutes. It went over an hour, and he like made me really think about some things. And I'm like, damn it, I didn't expect that to happen. I was like not thinking that was going to happen, but it was
Dude.
good.
Wow.
He's coming back on Cab, man. He's a monster, man.
He is. Big
He's
time.
a very interesting guy. And Nathan and he are like brothers. They met on this show, believe
We
it or
did.
not.
Yeah, we
That's
did.
really cool. Don't
Yeah.
you love that when guests become friends? It's the best.
Yeah. Well, we lived in the
It
same town.
was- Yeah, they
Oh.
both live in Esch.
Yeah.
And when I asked Nathan when we started Cab, I said, "Who's like the first 5 people you want to have?" I can't remember who. I know James Iandoli was one. I know Exo Academian was one. And so I messaged him, and he says to me, "Well, what kinds of questions would you ask me?" And so Nathan's like, "Oh, I got this, man." So Nathan, Nathan knew, what to say, and he fed him. And he's like, "Yes, I'll come on." And as soon as they came on air and started talking, I was like, these guys have had a shared experience growing up. Both of them grew up in a religious background, studied religion in university. I was like, these guys are brothers, man. It was just like, it took me like 5 minutes to figure that out. So it's great. And we've never had Darren on since. So thank God he's coming back so we can.
Yeah,
we
it's
can
the right
cut it up.
time.
Yeah,
And I think Meredith, to another sort of angle on your approach to Chris. So there is definitely the bear on the tricycle with the UFOs and the government interest in UFOs, right? Historically, there's been we don't study this kind of perspective.
Sure.
But I think one thing that Chris has not really been asked a lot about that you might have an opportunity to ask as an outsider is really what you raised earlier. And how does he sort of reconcile or balance the UFO experience with his religious upbringing? How does he contextualize those two things? People that follow Chris and have studied a lot of his interviews and things like that, I think it's like obvious to us that his religious background influences the way he understands it. But very few people seem, I don't know if it's a comfort issue or I'm not sure what it is, but he doesn't get a lot of direct questions about it. So I think that would be interesting to hear him respond on, are you still a believer? What is the nature of your belief now, in light of your experience? Getting him to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's a very good insight. Thank you for that. He seems very sincere when I've listened to his other interviews. He is completely what I would consider counter sensational. It's like he's doing this because he feels like there's a message that needs to get out, and he doesn't want these experiences to be wasted by being secret. And he's lost so much because of this, and it's heartbreaking because I know how the Pentecostal church is, and married to a preacher's daughter. I mean, his life too is just an incredible, just whirlwind and roller coaster. And so, yeah, there's so much there that it's almost. Do you ever have that where you have guests where you're like, there's so much you could, if you talked about everything, it'd almost be like talking about nothing. Yeah. And so you have to pick like which thing would be the most important to my audience, which is the thing that would be most satisfying to the guests, because you don't want it to be boring for them either. And yeah, he's just, as I read his book, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so insane. So
yeah, we like to say in cab, always leave them wanting more. And we can always have the person back for a second one, but you don't want to squeeze that fruit until there's no juice left. Then the person's exhausted, you're exhausted, and then there's no reason to have a second episode.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I want to say hi to Julie, our chat moderator, who has been battling illness in the hospital. And hi, Jules. One love to you from the cab crew. This is Meredith that's waving to you right there. And I'm hoping that you're going to get to go home soon. You sounded phenomenal last night, so that... no pun intended. So, so that was really cool. I was thinking about for you to ask, man, after this, what I want to do after this is I'd like to everybody to, we'll start with like Nathan and throw those topics. We can go down to Meredith and then Deb and then myself. But, is to try to get into the feel of what it's like to manifest the phenomenon into your reality on call with a person there. I'd like to know the mindset. I'd like to know what that feels like. And I also wanted to point out one other thing when you talked about how genuine this gentleman is. This is all against the backdrop of the entire town saying that he's a liar, that Chris Jr. and Ryan were liars, with them, I don't know if excommunicated would be the right word, but scorned and derided, I guess you could say.
Apostates, depending on what denomination you are.
Yeah. Heretics, Yeah.
Yeah, I think apostates is Mormon. Yeah.
Thank you. It sounds great, though, man.
Doesn't it? I love alliteration. We could be like alien apostates.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a new podcast.
Hey, that's a new. I was just about to say that. Yeah, I love that.
To be treated, like that is just absurd. And it's what I've told people about Anjali, and she's going to be coming up soon with John Ramirez. We'll have these two Intel professionals. She experienced something. If you don't believe her, fine. Don't believe her. Don't believe Chris if you're somebody from Fayetteville. But there's no reason to attack this person. Just say, I don't believe you. Have a great day. I'm going to Kroger.
It would be Publix. It would be Publix.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. We're in Florida, guys. Come on. I know that.
Come
Even
on.
I know that. Jeez. Get out of here with that Kroger nonsense.
I don't know they have Publix
Kroger.
in Fayetteville, Meredith. I really don't. Maybe they do. So anyway, all right. So let's go. Are you guys ready to go with our topics du jour?
Let's do it.
Okay, Nathan, hopefully you have the French onion soup with that baked cheese on top.
Oh, my gosh. Incredible.
And don't forget the potato chip question from Meredith before we go.
That's true. Yeah.
It will be a cab fail if we forget this.
We have to. All right. So So Meredith, you're, I'm sure, hearing this everywhere. We're all hearing this everywhere. AI, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I like to bring this up, I brought it up on a couple episodes already, is because it is a disruptive. It's disrupting our society. It is, and it will. And I wondered if you've given some thought to how it will disrupt, what we do. Content creation. We had TJ Allard on with us very recently, and he's one of the producers on the show Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, and he had an insight into this that I hadn't even considered, that I thought was worth sharing, and that was that once AI is kind of implemented in these YouTube or TikTok spaces, that essentially your algorithmic inclination will then just like instigate a flurry of content coming back at you that no human being will have created, but you will find compelling and interesting, etc. So, and it'll do it faster than you and I can put together a show like this.
Oh, please.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, what do you think about that? And where in all of that kind of transformation is the human experience, is the human connection? Are we going to lose that?
That is good. I'm listening to that episode of your show right now. I'm like halfway through it, so I haven't gotten to that point yet. So now I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to go back. This will be so much fun. I feel like at the end we'll like hand each other notes of like, okay, you listen to episode this
Yes.
number, I'll listen to episode that number.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
48.
from the production side of me is the first to kick in when we talk about AI, the side that, is like an occasional model, right? And when I mean model, it's not like runway guys. It's like the boring commercials that they're like, we want a good Midwestern looking woman. That's me. So I'm from Nebraska originally. So the side of me that knows about release forms is like, we have to change these yesterday, because when I go on set, I usually sign a release form that gives the client permission to alter my appearance in whatever way they seem necessary, which usually just means like, if I had lipstick on my teeth, you would edit it out. But now it has completely different implications. So one way that I feel AI will impact podcaster creation is that our media release forms will need to specify to what degree the creators will be using or not using AI. So that's one thing. And then as far as like our humanity, will robots take over, all of this sort of thing. I from talking with different people who are way smarter than me, I have learned that there's always pendulum swings in society. So I talked with Nathan, you might appreciate this, Joshua Harris, the author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And he was a central figure in late 1990s Pentecostal Christian evangelical community. He believes, he's since left all that, but he believes that because we've swung to the side of like hookup and apps and all of that, that there will be a pendulum swing back to a very traditional courtship that will again require another pendulum swing back to like free love. And I suspect that there will be something similar with AI, that it will spark what's already happening, which is a non-tech movement. Like there's people who are wearing little rings, like little blue or something, rubber rings. And that says like, hey, I'm open for you to flirt with me in real life. And they go places in real life and they don't use apps. And there's dumb phones that you can buy, right? And so I think that AI will speed this movement along, but I am concerned about how much it will take and that we won't be able to get back, because, I think it's changing our physiology. I think it's changing the way our brains are wired. It's changing. If you look at young people, all of they all have shoulder impingements. They're all like shoulders are rounded forward. So it sounds weird, but I do feel like there are some things that it will change that we may not be able to swing back just with a simple, decade or two.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff. Deb, what do you think about that? Have you thought about that with your show and our show?
Yeah, I think that one of the issues will be that the standard of having information is going to be raised because we've already had such access to information, but with AI, like just compiling everything for us, like instantaneously, like if there's a question, people will have access to it. I can't foresee the traditionalist movement lasting because I think that this is actually going to move towards being more integrated with us in the future, which is, I know, somewhat sinister, but I think it's going to happen. Like, take a phone from a teenager. Good luck. It's like it's a trial. I think that, that's just going to be part of who we are. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, even now, technically, we're kind of using AI just to do StreamYard. I think even the visuals that people have are getting more and more advanced, and we just keep going in that direction. So that's what I
Are
think.
you referring to neurotech also a little bit, or
Yes, but
just
it won't be Neuralink because they messed up. It's going to be some of their competitors, which already have
yeah?
human trials and are better. Sorry, Musk.
Yeah, I think that actually I saw my paper on this in Grammarly yesterday because I wrote at least a couple of papers in 2020 when I was in college about this, and I think it's very dangerous because of the fact that the control measures are not in place prior to, and I think the technology will outpace the adult in the room controls that need to constrain it. You guys, everybody on this panel here knows what's happened when they've run some tests and what AI unleashed, even in a closed environment, was trying to do. And the paper that I read and that I wrote and the sources I looked at all felt the same way. Elon was one of them. Jan Tallinn from Skype was another one. And there's another gentleman who spoke before Congress. He's a communications guy. He spoke about 5G and connect it to AI and the speed that it could process and have knowledge. So I think that the human interaction is very important, and we have to be very, very careful about thinking that this society that we have, and when I say that, I mean this world society, not just American society, is infinite. That it is. Believe me, the Romans didn't think that the Goths were going to come marching into to Rome either. So, although I guess you could argue that Caesar kind of Julius pushed him in that direction, more so than what the Senate may have wanted. But anyway, I think it could be quite dangerous, and I think I think that the way I adjudicate this is the same way I think about the phenomenon. It's the same way I think about Bigfoot. These guys have heard me say until they want to just like take two foamies and stick them in the earplugs like they're on the flight line. It's not necessarily this exactly, right? It's not necessarily this or that. It could be this and that. So do we need
Yes.
AI? Yes. Medicine is able to go through a myriad of, whether there's a conflict in drugs, whether or not, if we ever are able to solve this cancer crisis, AI may be what's able to find, that certain protein or something. So I think it can be very valuable in probably thousands of ways, not the least of which is Nathan's artwork, which may be the most important thing that it can do. But but also I think that artificial general intelligence, strong AI, if you want to use that word, can be very, very dangerous if there are not strict measures and controls put on what they allow it to do, because now it's cracking every password and it can shut off power. It can do all kinds of things if it were to get there. So yes, very valuable, very helpful, but could be very dangerous. Same thing. Bigfoot, is it flesh and blood? Yes. Could there be a supernatural or not even extraterrestrial? Could there be a component of it that we don't understand? Yes. Can UFOs, are they extraterrestrial? Are they all ultra-terrestrial, where its origin is actually here on Earth and they appear when we want them to? Or extraterrestrial? Maybe both. Who knows? Can we know that? There's evidence to suggest both are true. So that's my theory about that. And who's next? Miss Meredith Edwards and her topic.
Okay, I'm torn between two. I kind of want to know if y'all have had an experience. And okay, Nathan's nodding.
That's just what we do. We nod on cab. There's a lot of nodding.
I'm an
Deb's
active
nodding,
listener.
but you can't see her.
He said I'm an active listener. I love that. And I expect Deb to nod, seeing as she's in the mental health space. Okay, that I'm gonna make that my question is have you had an experience that is outside of the normal stuff? And if you have, what is it?
I just want to say this is a dated question. Jimi Hendrix had it right on the front of his album. Are you experienced? You know, we're back to 1968. Go ahead.
I love it.
Go ahead, Deb. This is you, buddy.
I'm going first. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I think, well, it's really hard to say where to start on that. I've had a really intensive dream that is very similar to what people talk about with NDEs. I've had paranormal experiences when I was ghost hunting, which I found out I am not brave enough to do. Like, because I have like a sensory reaction, right? I've had some dreams that foretold things. For some reason, it was family pregnancies over and over. I was like the twins, the gender, all of those things were told to me in dreams. I've had a couple UFO sightings. To me, that's not a big deal, actually. And I've had really intensive meditations, which has resulted in me kind of exploring the science of the brain, neurology, and trying to understand what's going on with that. So, yeah, quite a few, actually.
It's amazing. I love this question because I'm not a traditional experiencer. So we've interviewed a lot of them that have had amazing, fantastical sightings and experiences with beings, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm honest with my own self and looking at the experiences I've had in life that are strange, that aren't as clear cut as those, there are many, right? And I think this is where the real meat of it all is, quite frankly, is that everybody has experiences that are strange and hard to fit into those categories we talked about earlier, those neat little scientific ways we understand the world. I've had experiences of precognition. I've had experiences of insane synchronicity that defies any kind of logic or coincidental interaction. And who hasn't, right? If you really get people talking, and oftentimes you'll find that these things have dramatically influenced their entire life trajectory, right? So how many people can you meet that will say, I met my partner in this super strange way, and I had this dream about them, and here we are, and like I'm devoted my entire life to this person. Wow, it was on a. You're telling me like on a thing that you ate one night and a dream that you had, and you're now 50 years later you've been happily married with kids and grandkids or something. Like that. But that happens. It happens all the time. And so I think that if we are honest with ourselves, this whatever this is part and parcel to the human experience, and that to me is actually really exciting, because I think you can learn from those mundane things in just the same way that we can learn from these fantastical experiences. But I have had a little bit of fantastical experiences too. I've had some altered state experiences that were really wild.
Is that code for mushrooms?
I won't say. I won't say.
I knew you were going there, Meredith.
Confirm, no deny. But
can
yeah, I mean,
neither
it's fascinating stuff, right? Like where I mean, I literally had an experience where I thought something in this moment that that later on that day, like it happened.
Having a knowing.
Yeah, I mean, and it was something I would never think about, never occur to me, period, and it happened. So that's hard for me to explain, and powerful. But I think what's weird too is like people will just, the last thing I'll say on this is synchronicity. Sometimes people go, I had a synchronicity today. It's about this, book or something. And so I guess now I need to devote my all of my energy to reading this book and learning everything about, such and such. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the takeaway of a synchronicity, is to just kind of fall down whatever rabbit hole that synchronicity might mean for you. It could at some point, but maybe not always. I think what it really is, though, is just telling us it's like we're stuck in a box that is dark, and synchronicities are beams of light, rays of light, of sunshine that are kind of finding their way through the cracks of the box and telling us there's another world out there that is more real than the box that we live in, and we got to break out from that to experience it.
The box sounds like code for the what's the word? The dome theory, that we live in a dome.
Oh, the dome.
Yeah,
Chris
Chris
from the
Bledsoe
Truman Show, or like
Yep. Yeah, Chris Bledsoe talks about it in his book, that he uses a word that I can't bring to mind right now, but like, what's the thing you put a plant in to keep it humid?
Oh, a
terrarium.
A terrarium. Yeah, he calls it like the terrarium theory. And so I thought you were alluding to that, much like your altered state statement.
Totally
an
alluding to
altered
that.
state.
Great tee up. Thanks, Meredith.
Yeah.
Great movie by William Hurt. But what's funny is we're back to Logan's Run again. So anybody who hasn't seen it, it's late 1979 or 80, and it stars Dirk Benedict. If you guys remember him from the A-Team, Dirk Benedict. And I can't remember the female. It was a British actress, but interesting movie about living in a bubble and when they were able to find their way out. It was called Sanctuary. So anyway, let's see. This was Deb's.
Tell us about your experience,
No, this
DJ.
was Meredith's question, right?
Yeah.
Because we went slightly out of order. What was it again?
Your experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my experience, I did have a sighting as a young person, but it wasn't long enough to really go through that whole series of emotions, because it kind of went the other direction. I did have another kid there, and that was about it. But in terms of synchronicities, other than the Police album, number 1 and 2, like both those, I have, Nathan and I actually have a synchronicity about our friendship, which involves his older brother, Justin. I really, it's funny that the people on this show haven't. I mean, if we think about everybody on the show, we really don't have a lot of experience with the phenomenon, but we're able to have people on and they speak about it and take that in, and it's fascinating. It's just, one of the most fun things I could think of spending an evening doing. So sorry,
Agreed.
I didn't have a better.
No.
All right, so after that, Deb actually is going to go with her topic. Then I'll go. Then and Nathan, you already went, right?
I did.
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Debsy.
Okay, so today I got in the mail a little ET figure. It was like the 40th anniversary, and it's now in my collection of things, right? And it had me thinking about something we don't talk about that often, that supposedly the Intel community influences what we see in our media. And I've noticed lately that there's a shift towards more films about AI and us becoming integrated with it, actually, which, as DJ pointed out, is sometimes very dark. So it's a different twist than it's separate from us. It's now something we're integrated with. So I guess my question to everyone is, how is media influencing our society, and will basically AI be the next UFO? Will it be the next God? Will it be the next Fatima?
So first of all, you know about that story with Bryce Zabel and an official from the government coming to visit him about his TV show that they were shooting. What this show, if you hadn't heard of this, Meredith, this show wasn't even out yet. They were just shooting it and editing, and he came and said, "Yeah, you've got some of this stuff right. Some of it you don't, but some of it you got really right." And he came and wrote some things out on a napkin about UFOs and blew this guy away and then literally disappeared. It was at a party. So I think that there are certain government officials who have went and visited with producers of movies. A lot of people say that Spielberg had interactions. I think Deb and Nathan could probably name one or two others that have had interactions with government officials. I don't think that they have a direct institutional effect and on Hollywood. I think that there may be people who have tried to press certain buttons at certain times for certain reasons, which we could not be aware because we would have to know what was on their plate and what their mission was to know why they would approach a Hollywood official, a Hollywood producer of some sort, and influence them to project a certain narrative that they thought would be helpful to whatever outcome they wanted to see. Regarding AI, and I think the rest of what you were asking was how AI might affect the entertainment industry and what we see on TV. Was that it, Deb?
Yeah, like that seems to be re sort of being put like in the center of a lot of movies now. Is that affecting
Um,
our society?
I had a guy that I teach yoga at a gym, and we just got a new Marine Corps, a guy who got out of the Marine Corps, and he's working at the gym on the desk. And he talked to me that one of his friends was able to do a semester's worth of work using Chat GPT to write papers. And I mean, I can't say that I can independently verify that this is true, but that is scary if something like that did happen, and you were able, like in my school, to go through all the different modules and have Chat GPT do all your chats that you needed to do, and then all your outlines and your papers. That's pretty scary. But in terms of entertainment, um, I I think that there is potential to feed people more of what they want, and sometimes what people want, if you watch cable news, is not necessarily what is good for them. They want a reinforcement of what they already believe, and sometimes you'll listen to somebody like um, I can't remember his name now, John somebody. He's a great historian that I listen to his pod, but he talks about these better angels, and sometimes what we want um, is not necessarily our better angels. People sometimes like to eat red meat, so to speak, and I don't mean that literally. I mean it figuratively. So I'm not sure that AI would necessarily be good in that way either. I think what's beautiful about humanity, what makes us unique, is art. We've talked about that on this show. What Meredith is doing is art. Uh, when you're doing photographs, that's art. Nathan is doing art. Musicians is art. Stage performers is art. Storytellers is art. All of these things are what the phenomenon can't do. So why would you want to cede that over to something that only sees life through zeros and ones and can only mimic what a human does? They can look like we've talked about it. You could take an AI robot to a U2 concert, and you could make it dance around, and you could make its face smile, and can even maybe move to the music, but you can't make it feel the music. When I went to see U2 in '87 and people cried, you can't make it cry unless it just goes, oh, that person sitting next to me is crying. I'm going to start to energize the tear ducts. So AI would be the worst thing, actually, probably, because humanity is I don't know if it's necessarily exceptional and unique, only that we know, just because we don't know. There may be another race of people out there that also have art and music and have what Meredith alluded to at the beginning, which is the spirit that we believe that when Meredith's body is no longer here, that her spirit will continue, and her life force, her energy, and will maybe go to another body, right? So anyway, that's my opinion. I'm sorry I can't give you a really smiley, cabby kind of a take on it, but that's my take. Money.
Engaged machine smile. Yeah.
Nathan, when you do these jokes, your pastor is showing. Just so you know,
And
like
I'm a
the
dad too, so
the
it's
dad
I get it.
jokes,
Yeah,
like
it's
that's
everywhere.
totally youth
Yeah.
pastor material.
No, it's you got me totally. Yeah, guilty. Yeah. Okay. So, man, where do I want to go with this? So, attention is our culture has incentivized attention. Like attention translates into dollars, right? So, I think that we, in a way, have an opportunity with AI to like build into it. This is why it's so important that we really take some time, be thoughtful with it, right? Because we have an ability to kind of train it to help us be the best that we want to be, not appeal to our lesser nature, right? And I think that that's if we just unleash it into the world that we currently have created for ourselves, we're only going to get more of the same, but to the nth degree of the same. And you know, we can structure all of this to where it incentivizes us in better ways to do better things for not only for ourselves but for each other. And our entertainment, our media, all of these things right now are designed along the lines of things you guys have already touched on. That's, you know, fear motivation. That's, you know, keeping up with somebody else, you know, sort of trying to maintain your social status, because that is power in our society, you know, et cetera, et cetera. If we shift that, if we could kind of take the reins here and kind of create a new incentive structure, then we have an opportunity to really make some, I think, fundamental and amazing changes in the world. But if we don't, if we're not careful, I don't see that happening. I just see that we're going to end up in a more kind of dystopic version of where we are now, at least in the near term. And maybe this is what it's like, quite frankly. I mean, some have said that one of the great filters, if you've heard that concept, the great filter is essentially like an event in a civilization's life cycle that they either get through and get past, or they can't get through and get past it and they die. So a great filter moment could be like a nuclear apocalypse, you know, but similarly, a great filter could be like getting through this AI transition, right? So if we can navigate this, and it will be bumpy and challenging, and there'll be maybe even generations that struggle with how to integrate this powerful tool with who we are. But if we can get out on the other side of that, it has this, you know, immense potential to be, you know, to transform everything about who we are, and kind of almost basically like give birth to a new species. You know, if you think about the phenomena, maybe that's where they already are. Maybe they have gone through the same kind of transition, or at least some of them anyway, and have come out on the other end. And the things that they can do in terms of how they interface with us appear to us like magic, but it's really just, you know, kind of the end point of some of their technological advancement. I don't know. I don't like the idea that the government is, you know, kind of puppet mastering the citizenry. I think that, DJ, to your point, they're not like always, they're not in the director's chair, you know, calling the shots. But at the same time, it is true that our media outlets, you know, they have contacts, they have sources, you know, and those sources are in the government. And if the government wants them to talk about a story, they're going to call that media outlet and say, I've got a scoop for you that, you know, your competitor doesn't have, and you can either run with this story and be the first to break it, or I'm going to go call them and they're going to break the story. You know, so there is a little bit of that gaming happening there, depending on which administration, you know, wants to talk to which audience and upplay, you know, and it's kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of grotesque, right? I mean, there are just many aspects of our culture that I think are kind of out of whack, out of shape, you know, that we need to reform, and many of us feel helpless to do so, right? So maybe AI, if we kind of say, hey, help us out, like we are basically powerless to do this on our own. We need you, who can understand how to manipulate us better than anything else, to like kind of steer us in a direction that we really want to go, our aspirational goals.
I love it, because I've been put in this this glass half empty glass, and Nathan's half full, and I love it, and I hope that everything you just said is correct. The problem is that it requires a morality that potentially it is not able to have.
Sure.
And
Or
so
whose morality, right? I mean,
right.
if
And
I'm
it's-
programming it, is it Nathan's
Right.
ethics? Is it DJ's ethics? How do we
Well,
decide
maybe.
these things?
But
and I want to say we have to add the other level that there have been people who come out from the government saying they were hired to influence the media. They were hired to influence scripts. There's people who, like, there's an article about how Contact was changed by the government. They changed some of the script. So are they influencing that story? So, okay, it's Meredith's
Yeah.
turn. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Mel.
I have two pre-thoughts, and one of them is if we were handing out awards for like the best wrap-up question, Deb, like you would have the award because holy balls, Batman. And then my second thought is like never have I ever been a guest on a podcast where I took notes. So I have a full page. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so to tackle Deb's question, I disagree with DJ that I do think that the media and government are in bed together. My husband has more graphic ways to describe that. Yeah. And we know this because it's very obvious when you look at other countries' movies and you're like, that is obviously propaganda. And then you're like, oh, right, we've done the same thing. Top Gun, for example.
Right.
I'll also think about who is the enemy in every movie: the Russians, the Iranians, the Afghanis. Like they other different people groups so that it strengthens military efforts and justifies tax dollars. Unpopular opinion. And when we do see this in UFO related movies as well, right? I mean, Project Blue Book, like, and to gaslight citizens who had genuine experiences, and we haven't even gone over that hurdle yet for our U.S. military members who are, supposedly encouraged to like report these things. Now they're still trying to navigate through these murky waters of stigma. So I totally agree that there is some behind the curtains communication at its lowest. As far as AI and society and media and the next step of our human evolution, I would love to ask the question, what problem are we solving for? Because when I think about what does it mean to advance as a society, it doesn't mean that a robot drives my freaking car. It means that we solve the problem of our evolutionary mismatch, right? Yeah, let's solve cancer. Let's cure cancer. But why is no one asking what causes cancer, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, let's tackle gun violence in the United States, but why is no one asking why this is so common? And let's look at causality and not just like consumer our way into a solution. And I feel like AI is just a real shiny thing. Not just, but I feel like it's more of a shiny thing. And so as Americans, and I don't think it's just an American thing, but that definitely as Americans, we are biased towards shiny things. And so we're like, oh yes. Well, and plus we get to be number one as America. We love to be number one. USA, USA. We've been chanting that for so long, we can't hear anything else. And I think that if we kind of take a pause and to create some intention around what problem we're solving for, it will lead to some unpopular next steps, especially in the areas of technology and like EMFs. And, we have this continual more internet, more tech, more screens, more everything. But what if we have like digital free zones? What if there's just green spaces where Wi-Fi doesn't work? There's a reason that camping feels so good, like
Yes.
how do we reconnect as earthlings? Do we really have to send a man to space to know that human bodies are best oriented on Earth because of the electrical, whatever, 7 something megahertz that the Earth gives off? I just think that AI can be a distraction, and advancement, air quote advancement, can be a distraction. Like, let's talk about why we get Alzheimer's instead of just trying to literally plug in ourselves to solve it. So that's my take.
Love that.
That's a great point. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
mean, well, I think I just want to echo what you're saying. We can get distracted by the pyrotechnics a lot of our technology and not solving the root cause of our condition. And if I guess I'm of the opinion, if we can somehow hack our way to getting us to behave better by using the thing that we are already enslaved to, maybe we should try to do that, because everything else we've tried isn't working. Now, I love the idea of, kind of imposed digital free zones. I think that's incredible, and that's what we call a forest, right? But like a forest around
But
us.
if
Yeah,
we have Starlink blasting us with Wi-Fi, this is my point.
You can't, right?
We
Yeah.
have to. I think some of this technological development is like the digital version of processed foods. It's highly palatable
Mhm.
and completely addictive. And so we have to think about like how our ancient brains, because our brains are still really freaking old, right? And we are biased towards dopamine experiences. And so that's why we like negative shit, is because we're like, yeah, there's a problem. Ugh, I'm gonna go solve it. And that's, no one, it's because in our, our tribal selves, we needed to remember the negative in order to stay alive. But now we're just fighting on Twitter. So
Yeah. No, you're right.
I love it.
It's an animating factor.
yeah.
Speaking of processed foods, Nathan, can you take those fish sticks out of the oven, please? I don't.
Yes. Well, and also, while I'm doing that, we have to ask the question.
Potato chip question. We better
We
get
have
it
to.
in before I
Okay.
do, because I have a topic for you
I know you
guys.
do.
And hopefully it'll be quick, but yes. So Meredith, first of all, if you have a PhD, you'll be in one side of the study with the PhDs like Dr. Pasulka and Dr. Jeff Kreipel. Oh, we got to get Dr. Masters. We haven't asked him yet. And a couple other PhDs we've spoken with, Dr. Gary Nolan. But if you're not a PhD, you'll be with me, Nathan, Debs, and us regular peoples, right? So in terms of potato chips, do you geared toward a sea salt potato chip, either with ridges or without ridges? Or are you headed towards a seasoned potato chip of one sort or another? Please, ma'am.
Wow. I avoid seed oils. So it really limits my chip selection.
Okay,
So,
because mine is fried in avocado oil, Boulder
oh,
Canyon. Okay, it's at Whole Foods. So,
we don't have that here.
Is that a fruit? Avocado is technically a fruit, right? Is that right? Am I right about that?
Well, avocado is a stable fat, so it would be less likely to oxidize.
There we go.
So, and oxidization equals inflammation. Yeah.
Bad
So,
stuff.
yeah. So bad stuff. But yeah, I like to eat my carbs in the form of chocolate. So I would answer this question if I was like on Miss America stage. I would go with a chocolate covered non-seed oil salty ass chip.
Nice.
wow, wow. You have just shifted.
That's a whole new
shifted the entire
snack
paradigm.
sensation. Yeah.
Yeah, like nobody has mentioned a chocolate covered potato chip. I'm rethinking my entire life after the show.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Ontological
re-examine
shock
everything.
happening right now. Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to mention one thing about the topic that we discussed a little earlier, because I want to point to Dr. Michael Masters. He is at Morpho Time on Twitter, Meredith, and we've had him on. He is a blast too. He's a hoot, and he has and you guys, I might need Deb and Nathan to help me out here, but basically that they're time traveler. That he believes that there's at least a portion of the phenomenon that are time travelers, that they're future us, and one of the reasons that they are harvesting biology from us is due to a declining birth rate. And he's talking about that the U.S., the birth rate is declined. I can't remember the percentage. Did he say in the upper 40 percentile? And I actually I had on, for the high school podcast, I had on a couple of the students that are there now. And when they said there's only 500 kids in the school, we thought that it was small when there was 800 when I was there. and now there's 500. So I don't know, declining birth rate. So I don't know what all that advancement or what the future us that they may have trouble with relations, with procreation, with all these things. I mean, there's at least a theory out there. It could be nothing more than just a hypothesis, but it is at least explained by the fact that a lot of women report that they have taken different parts of their biology that they think would be necessary to either procreate, which then other people are seeing humanoid types, and then also the possibility of making a hybrid being where it's electromechanical, but it has maybe a biological brain because they don't have consciousness. So I'm a little worried about that aspect.
Can I chime in on
Yes,
this?
ma'am. Please do.
So I do speak to people who treat experiencers, quite a lot of them, and apparently there's a shift away from that.
Mhm.
So that's a new update that I was told from someone who's probably spoken to like thousands of experiencers at this point. Apparently, the new issue is just us trying to take care of the planet. So if there was a biological imperative, apparently they've got what they need at this point. And honestly,
Yeah.
if they could create biological robots, which is what people think they might be, they probably never really needed it for for themselves. They probably needed it for something else. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot of probably in there. Yeah, we have no idea, but we just know we know that we know that people said they've taken it. We don't know why they're taking it. Everything after that, we're just speculating. But it at least it's safe to say there's something in that they think we have that they don't have, or they wouldn't need to get it from us. That's the apex of what I can speculate, unless somebody has actually, these people that have interacted with them and asked these questions. So. Here's my question, because it actually goes right into this. And Nathan is going to think that I'm totally stealing the ball here and running down towards his goal. But it's because this is a hypothesis that Nathan had, and I've sort of shifted it around because when I thought, what topic am I going to present for you guys, it has to be something that's on my mind. And because of stuff that Deb's hearing from people that have downloads, that Nathan's hearing, that other friends of ours as well brought me this question. So the question is, and I'm starting with Nathan, what should the evaluation process be for an individual who receives downloads or has communications with the phenomenon, and what their potential motives might be? So to try to put that in layman's just normal conversation terms, Nathan, what process should a person go through when they're being told something to evaluate what the motives are of that intelligence, that NHI that they're communicating with, and what the motives might be?
Yeah, and this is this is the tough one, right? So I've been with people who've had these experiences, who've had these downloads, and have been told things that there's a strong compulsion, right? That whatever they're told is happening, is going to happen. There's an imminence to it, really, which is often why you see that people like Chris Bledsoe, who, Meredith, as you said earlier, seems like a pretty humble guy who doesn't really want to say things, but he feels like he has to say things. So there's this, I don't know, catalyst in a way that occurs when they have an experience like this. But I think the key here is to sit with it, right? So whatever you've downloaded, if you think that is what has happened to you, it's important to, I think, sit with that message and explore the contours of what it is and how you understand it. It's in a way, like, to use something that most people might think about is like a dream interpretation, right? So I've had a dream and all these weird things happened. Like, does it mean that, a giraffe is going to show up like with a crossbow in the morning in front of my front lawn? No, like what does that mean? You know, you say, yeah, it's a strange thing. I just came up with that. But you get my idea here. Like we think of these like dreams in a metaphorical sense, right? And we interpret our dreams through our own experiences and what things like symbolize, you know, this for me symbolizes whatever that is. So I would encourage people to do the same exercise, that if you've had a download where you've received a message, sit with it for a little while and go through it and think about it from not just your initial reaction to it and what you think it means, but how it also might be interpreted from different perspectives, right? So that's just the bare minimum. Do that, okay? Go through a different analysis, you know, kind of try to look at it from different vantage points. But beyond that, this is what we've talked about forever, DJ. You know, can you trust any of these messages, right? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know there's no way to know the answer to that. If some sort of intelligence is communicating with us in this way that we don't understand, and we're not having a kind of a bi-directional communication with them, and we haven't established a relationship really, or any kind of trust with that, then can you trust them? I don't know that you really can, other than to say, is what they're saying to you something that you feel like resonates with you in the context of your humanity, right? Is it good for you as a person? Is it also good for humanity to understand this, like to take this information in and action it in some way? If the message you're getting is, you know, go do something dangerous to yourself and to your fellow person, I don't think that's a message that anyone should listen to. That would be against our best interest, right? Those are my initial thoughts.
Meredith, my friend.
I think the most important thing for a person to do who's received a download is to post it on Reddit immediately.
And
that's a great idea,
those.
actually.
We have seen those.
You get some positive responses to that.
No, actually, this is way over my scope of practice. I would say I would, if I was on a committee to make recommendations, then I would call Dr. Bruce Grayson, because he literally wrote the policy of how to quantify and qualify near-death experiences. It's called the Grayson scale. It's named after the dude.
Wow.
And so it's like a peer-reviewed process. And so I think he could take that formula and the process of making the process and apply it to a person who's had this kind of experience.
Love that.
I love it. That's, yeah, I mean, you know, you're saying that, you know, you don't feel qualified to necessarily answer, but to kind of get yourself educated on, you know, an NDE, and then how could I apply that to this download and then disseminate that information responsibly. And I think that's one of the things that people in the community take issue with, is when they think something's irresponsible about information that's disseminated, but they have to understand that when that person receives that information, it's nearly life-changing for them.
Yeah.
And I haven't experienced it, so I can't beef on somebody that has had it and feels like they have to get that information out there because it's a service to humanity. Debs.
I have so many things on this too, because there's a psychology side to this, and then there's a historical side to this where people talk about muses, and then there's, you know, what's happening with the experiencers. So these are my thoughts. Let me try to collect them all. So the first thing is, historically, Einstein and Thomas Edison sort of took advantage of the theta level, like that we experience in the brain, right? And what they did was they would like almost fall asleep, but not fully fall asleep, and then they would get into a creative state. They would solve problems like in this in between asleep and awake state. So anyone can do this, and it's the same state you reach with meditation and so forth, where we are solving problems. So the thing that I noticed when I was doing research on this is that people in DMT states also go through something like this, but it's very clear that it's an introspective thing. They're working out their own issues, right? So when I'm hearing like what we should do to evaluate someone coming forward with their experiences, the first thing I'm going to think is, well, this is coming from you. So whether or not it's a message from elsewhere, it's all is going to be through the lens of your own interpretation, if that makes sense. It's, and whether or not it's something to be trusted, or not. The issue is, are you understanding that correctly? Are you understanding that experience correctly? Are you um, contaminating it a little with your own stuff also? All of those are factors. So, it's sort of like they say, don't shoot the messenger, right? But sometimes the messenger is the problem. you know, I, I, I have to say, like, with all the encounters that we had with UAPs, I wonder sometimes if they've been trying to send us a message with just their movements or something, and we're just missing it. And like they might be like, why can't
Yes.
they see us? Like everyone's like, oh, they're hiding. But what if they're like right in front of us going, why can't you see us?
Hmm.
Like we're trying
Elizondo
to
says that. He says that
right.
maybe them just the way they're maneuvering in the sky when people see them could be communication. We just don't know what it means.
Right. If you remember in Close Encounters, communication happened with music and it happened with the lights. Like everyone thinks, the download is the communication, but I'm really questioning that. I'm really thinking that's going to be filtered through our own interpretation, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's very complex, and there needs to be a lot of sort of self analysis of any biases that you might hold, and then like what Meredith said, maybe you take in some academic work of somebody who maybe has a peer reviewed entire paper, journal, book, or something on this, and then before you spread that out, because you know what you want to be true, but that may not be, the message. So I'll tell you what, man, it's been a while since we've done an hour and what is this, an hour and 45 minutes, but damn, it was worth it. So Miss Meredith Edwards, could you please tell everybody about all of your cool stuff that you're doing that we could dope up on?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been fun. I was looking forward to this and it did not disappoint. So thank you. Yeah, the best place to find me, I'm most active on Instagram, Meredith for Real. And my podcast is called Meredith for Real, The Curious Introvert. And there are plenty of, well, not plenty, there's about 8 episodes in there that would definitely be of interest to your audience. Tim McMillan, the co-founder of The Debrief, is episode 95. Diana Walsh-Basuka, number 148. Leon Baker was a Mexico-Texas Border Patrol agent who had lots of paranormal experiences. That's episode 155. There's really no specific order to listen to episodes, so you can explore and bring your ADD and have a good time. Coming up, we've got lots of episodes that are around crazy stories that have happened to people, a woman who survived a serial killer attack. And then we talk about creating your own closure when no physical closure exists, adult friendship, making and keeping friends as a grown-up, and health and wellness. So how to, kind of tap into some of those air quote biohacks in order to achieve not just good labs at your main physician's doctor's appointment, but really vitality. So that's kind of what's going on right now.
Not to mention that you had that couple on that told you how to retire at 30. Those
Yeah.
guys were so cool. They were so smart. Nathan, if you haven't heard that one, I don't know the number of that episode, but it was a fascinating episode where basically they went through, not only that, they went to Hawaii and lived for a year. How long did they stay in Hawaii? Do you
It was
remember
6
that?
months in Hawaii.
6 months in
Yeah,
Hawaii.
yeah. And
For
that's the
how much a week?
Oh yeah, the Keys. It's Lauren and Stephen Keys, and I don't know the episode off the top of my head. But if you go to my website, which is meredithforreal.com, you can put in the search box any topic, and then it'll search the episodes, and so you can bring up the ones that are most interesting to you.
And just this one in particular, beyond all the great UFO guests that you just mentioned, you will be fascinated at how they figured out how to buy cars and sell cars on the cheap. They just figured out every possible way. And they said, every now and again they might work, but they're basically retired at 30 and they know how to do this. And they're earning money on their money and all that stuff, right? Because they saved a lot when they got married. So fascinating, those folks. Let's go with Cabby Goodbye, starting with Debs, please.
Well, thank you again for coming on this National Paranormal Day, and hopefully in the future we're just going to call it National Normal Day, and like everyone will come together and be like, this is something that's happening to everybody. Thank you for sharing your insights, and I'm really excited. I feel like, you have a lot of interest in this, and it's exciting to see other people with that passion come out and talk to us. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say everything will be in the show notes that we have on Meredith. It will all be in there. So if you want to get a hold of her, you will find it in the show notes or YouTube and the podcast for this episode. Let's go with my man, Money Nathan.
Yeah, Meredith, this has been a delight. It's been absolutely fantastic. I applaud you for the things that you're doing in your show. Having that meaningful connection with another person, even if the topic is strange and weird, I think that actually enables something special. That we can go deeper past that, veneer that we all just sort of traffic around and get to know a person, who they really are. So thank you for taking that effort and for promoting that just as an activity. Like, that's fantastic. So great work. And we look forward to hearing what's coming down the line from you and checking back in with you in the future.
Oh, we'll be in touch for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Meredith, that next time since we did so much UFO, that next time we'll have Matt. We could do some Bigfoot and more paranormal, ghostish kind of stuff. He's had both. So, yeah, hopefully we could do a part 2. That would be so awesome. Again, I'm honored that you would come on here. You really remind me of Kate Casey the first time that I had Kate Casey on. You probably don't know who she is, but you will, because I'll make sure I send you her podcast. She's out in SoCal, but she's Philadelphia sort of born and raised. And just like you, another great interviewer, great podcaster that I had on my old show, and then we had her on Cab. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Namaste. And for Miss Meredith, for Deb's Money Nathan, this is DJ saying peace out, one love. We'll see you down the road. And as always, we're wondering what's up around the bend.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.